I was stirring a pot of vegetable soup when I felt a gentle tug on my apron. I thought it was just the edge of the kitchen counter, but when I looked down, I found my granddaughter standing there with her big, innocent eyes and a small white pill in her hand. Her little voice sounded so natural, so calm, that for a split second, the meaning of her words didn't register. "Grandma, Mommy asked me to put this in your glass." The world stopped. The spoon remained suspended in the air. The bubbling of the soup faded into a dull hum in my ears. My heart gave a jump so violent I felt a piercing chill rush through my entire body. I crouched down slowly, trying not to show fear, and smiled at her the best I could. "Yes, sweetheart," I said softly, careful not to alarm her. "Can you give it to me? I want to see it." Trusting, as only a child can be, she placed the pill in the palm of my hand. Her tiny fingers were trembling ever so slightly, as if they knew that what she was doing wasn't quite normal. But she didn't understand. I couldn't understand either. Yet, the moment that pill touched my skin, I knew something terrible was happening inside my own home. But before we continue, I want to extend a very special invitation to you. Hit that subscribe button and smash the like button. This helps me see that you support the channel and enjoy my stories. Also, drop a comment down below telling me what city and state you're watching from. Now, let's continue. I stood up carefully, closing my hand around the pill, and controlled my breathing so I wouldn't collapse in front of the child. She was looking at me with that mix of innocence and worry only seen in children who feel they've participated in something they don't comprehend. "Did Mommy tell you that?" I asked in a neutral tone. My granddaughter nodded. "Yes. She said that when you weren't looking, I should put it in your juice glass. She said it was a surprise. A surprise." I felt my legs give way for an instant. I stroked her hair. "You did a very good job telling me, honey. We don't always have to do what adults say, you know? Especially when it makes you feel weird." She looked down, anxious. "Did I do something bad, Grandma?" I hugged her tightly so she wouldn't feel the tremors in my hands. "No, sweetie, you did the right thing." I went to the pantry, opened a small jar where I keep old spices, and hid the pill inside. I screwed the lid on tight. Then, I called out to my daughter from the living room, trying to sound normal. "Jessica, honey, can you come here for a second?" 10 long seconds passed. Silence. "I'm busy," she responded from her bedroom with that sharp, cutting tone that had become habitual lately. I didn't insist. I didn't want her to suspect anything. A few minutes later, I told my granddaughter to come with me to the bakery down the street. She agreed happily, never imagining that I just wanted to get her out of that house, a house that suddenly seemed like an unknown, dangerous, hostile place. I grabbed my purse with shaking hands, put the pill wrapped in a tissue inside, and we left. But we didn't go to the bakery. I drove straight to the medical clinic. When I arrived, Dr. Evans, who had been my primary care physician for over 20 years, looked up in surprise to see me walk in without an appointment. "Eleanor? Are you all right?" I showed him the pill without beating around the bush. "I need you to analyze this right now." I didn't need to explain anything else. Something in my eyes must have told him this was an emergency. He asked me to wait in the lobby. My granddaughter sat on the carpet, playing with some colorful blocks. I paced from one side of the room to the other, my heart pounding against my ribs as if it wanted to break out. 15 minutes later, the doctor came out, and the look on his face froze my blood. He was white as a sheet, jaw clenched, eyes wide as if he had seen a ghost haunting his practice. "Eleanor," he said in a low voice, "who gave you this?" "I can't tell you yet," I replied. "First, I need to know what it is." The doctor took a deep breath, bracing himself to say something he didn't want to pronounce. "This pill contains an extremely powerful sedative. This isn't something available for common medical use. In a small dose, it can cause disorientation, deep drowsiness, memory loss, but in a full dose." I leaned against the wall to keep from falling. "What would happen with a full dose?" I whispered. Dr. Evans brought a hand to his face. "It could cause respiratory arrest." Silent. Quick. I gasped for air. He stepped closer. "Eleanor, listen to what I am going to tell you very carefully." I nodded, feeling my heart tearing apart. "Call the police right now, and do not go back to your house. Under no circumstances." Goosebumps covered my skin. "Why?" I asked, my voice cracking. "What does this mean?" The doctor swallowed hard. It means this wasn't an accident. It means someone wanted to ensure you died without leaving a trace. And it means that person has had access to you and your personal items for quite some time. The tissue with the pill slipped through my fingers. My legs shook. My heart hammered against my chest, wanting to escape. I couldn't speak. I couldn't think. I could only repeat the question no one ever wants to ask themselves. Who wants to see me dead? And worse still, why did my own daughter send my granddaughter to hand me that pill? I left the clinic with my granddaughter's hand in mine, but I wasn't walking anymore. I was moving forward with a heart beating like a war drum. The doctor had repeated 3 times not to return home, to go straight to the police, not to ignore the gravity of the situation, but I couldn't think clearly. I felt like I was floating outside my own body, watching my life from above, as if this were happening to another woman, not me. The air on the street felt heavy. The sun was beating down, yet I was cold, a deep, internal cold, the chill of a betrayal that isn't yet understood but is already felt. My granddaughter looked back. "Grandma, aren't we going to buy the bread?" I swallowed hard. "No, sweetie, we're going somewhere else first." "Where?" "To a place where they can help us." She nodded without understanding. Blessed innocence. As we walked toward the police precinct, my mind overflowed with questions, but one drilled into my heart more than the others. Why Jessica? Why her? Every step I took seemed to open a drawer of memories I had kept locked for years, as if my memory had decided to wake up chapters I had wanted to forget. I remembered perfectly the day my daughter met her husband. I was 49, she was 22. She still had dreams in her eyes. She still believed life was a wide highway without dangerous curves. He was charming, kind, attentive, too attentive. One of those men who knows how to say the right thing, look at you the right way, and smile at just the right moment. My daughter fell hard. I didn't. There was something about him that made me uncomfortable, a sort of manipulative glint behind the charm. My instinct screamed at me to be careful, but I stayed silent. Because mothers often stay silent when we fear the truth will drive our children away. The first few years seemed happy, but I saw things, small things, things other people would ignore. But a mother doesn't. He decided where they went, what clothes she should wear, who she could talk to, what jobs she could accept, always with logical excuses, always with "it's for your own good," always with "I just worry about you." And she, in love, thanked him. Then came the long silences, the visits becoming less frequent, the phone calls getting shorter, the conversations turning cold. My daughter, once so luminous, began to dim. I would ask if she was okay. She would smile without showing her teeth and say, "I'm tired, Mom, just tired." Once I saw a bruise on her arm. She told me she walked into a door. It was the first of many doors that hit her. But what hurt me the most, what marked me, was the day she told me without looking me in the eye, "Sometimes I feel like you don't care how I'm doing, Mom. You're never really there for me." That phrase froze me. I was always there. Always. But she couldn't see it anymore. He had made sure of that. Because a skilled manipulator doesn't strike first. First he separates, first he isolates, first he sows resentment, and then, when the earth is dry, he strikes. When I arrived in front of the police station, my legs stopped responding. I stood still, paralyzed by the glass doors. I couldn't go in. Not yet. Not until I arranged the pieces of the puzzle. Not until I understood which part of my daughter was still her and which part was his work. I sat on a nearby bench and hugged my granddaughter. "Are you okay, Grandma?" she asked. No, I wasn't okay. "Yes, my love, I'm just thinking." She rested her little head on my shoulder. "Mommy says sometimes you exaggerate," she murmured without malice, "that you make drama over little things." I felt my heart crumple like a piece of paper. "She told you that?" "Yes. And that when we moved in with you, she'd be calmer if you were more discreet." The word burned me. Discreet, quiet, invisible, submissive, dead while alive. "Honey," I told her with a broken voice, "nothing that is happening is small." She hugged me tight, and in that embrace, I understood something that tore me apart. It wasn't my daughter who wanted to push me away. It was him. Him whispering in her ear, him manipulating her heart, him making her believe I was a threat when the true threat slept in her bed. But then the image returned to my mind with unbearable violence. My daughter gave my granddaughter a pill to put in my glass. What if it wasn't just manipulation anymore? What if she knew exactly what she was doing? What if there was nothing left in her that I had loved? I felt nauseous. I had no choice. I walked into the precinct, explained everything, showed the pill, gave the doctor's name, gave my address. When I mentioned my daughter's name, the officer at the desk looked up with a serious expression. "Ma'am, are you sure about this?" My eyes filled with tears. "I wish I wasn't," I replied. The officer took notes, called 2 detectives, and led me to a small room for a formal statement. For minutes that felt like hours, I answered questions about my routine, my recent symptoms, my suspicions, my daughter's upbringing, my relationship with her husband. When I mentioned I had been experiencing dizziness over the last few months, the detective, a woman named Detective Miller, furrowed her brow. "Dizziness? Disorientation? Headaches?" "Yes," I said. "And was your daughter nearby when these occurred?" I swallowed hard. "Always." She wrote something down without looking up. Then she took a deep breath before speaking. "Mrs. Eleanor, we need to protect you. You cannot return to your house for now." I nodded, but my legs were shaking. I looked at my granddaughter sitting on a plastic chair, drawing with a blue crayon they gave her at the front desk. So innocent, so oblivious to the horror. And another question, the cruelest of all, stabbed into my soul like a dagger. If my daughter was capable of trying to harm me, what could she do to her own child? I felt a deep vertigo. The tears finally fell silently. Thus began the darkest truth of my life, a truth that had been breathing inside my own home without my knowledge. A truth that would give me no rest until I uncovered it completely, even if that truth destroyed a mother's heart forever. That night, I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Although I was in a makeshift room within the victim services unit, with a narrow bed and cold lights, I felt the real danger wasn't on the streets, but in the blood running through my veins. The doctor had said the pill was deadly, but what he insinuated afterward left me trembling. This didn't start today. Those words hammered in my head. My granddaughter slept on a small cot, oblivious to everything. I watched her breathe softly, and a painful pang shot through me. What had she heard? What had she seen? What emotional burden was this hell leaving on her that she couldn't even comprehend? At 7 a.m., the officer on duty knocked on the door. "Mrs. Eleanor, Dr. Evans is here to see you. He says it's urgent." Urgent. I no longer knew which of all the emergencies I should attend to first. Dr. Evans was waiting for me in an empty conference room. His face was just as pale as the night before. Without preamble, he handed me a plastic folder with several reports inside. "I need you to look at this," he told me. My hands shook as I opened the first paper. It was a blood test of mine dated 4 months ago. "Doctor, I don't remember taking this test." "Yes, you did," he said quietly. "Right here, with me. You came in for constant dizziness, remember?" I closed my eyes. Yes, I had come. Jessica had brought me. She said it was my blood pressure, that I shouldn't worry, that it was just fatigue. I thought it was old age. I thought it was normal. The doctor pointed to a line on the report. The substance was already appearing here, in small doses, but present. I felt as if the air turned to liquid and I was drowning in it. "Small?" I asked with a broken voice. "Enough to cause excessive drowsiness, confusion, loss of balance. Not enough to kill you. At least not quickly." Tears blurred my vision. My daughter had brought me to the very doctor who could discover everything, trusting that he wouldn't see it, or perhaps trusting that I wouldn't understand. "And why didn't you tell me before?" I asked. The doctor sighed, sunken in shame, because the values were ambiguous. They looked like side effects of other common medications. But now, he handed me another document. "These results confirm it. You've been suffering from progressive poisoning for weeks." I felt a roaring in my ears. I didn't know if it was the sound of my heart trying to comprehend what my mind refused to accept. "Eleanor," the doctor said with a seriousness that pierced my soul, "someone has been administering this substance to you little by little, and whoever put it in that final pill knew exactly what they were doing." It took me several seconds to be able to speak. They were preparing me, like someone prepares soil, so my death would look natural. I brought my hands to my face. I wasn't crying. It was something else. It was a silent break, a collapse that made no noise but raised dust. The doctor continued. This isn't impulsive. This isn't an outburst. It is methodical, premeditated, intelligent. My daughter, I asked with barely a thread of voice. Would she be capable of— I couldn't finish the sentence. It hurt to say it. It hurt to think it. The doctor didn't answer. He didn't have to. I spent the rest of the morning giving statements to Detective Miller, a woman with a firm face and compassionate gaze. They asked me questions about my habits, my diet, recent visitors. They asked who had access to my medications, who made my breakfast, if anyone lived with me. My daughter, I said finally. She lives with me. She prepares almost everything. The detective noted something down without losing her neutral expression. Do you trust her? The question was simple. The answer, impossible. She is my daughter, I replied. I didn't ask that, the detective said softly. I asked if you trust her. I felt my hands clutching my skirt. I don't know, I whispered. It was the most painful truth I had ever spoken in my life. While the police processed protection measures, the doctor insisted on doing a full physical exam. He took me to a medical room within the building. He checked my eyes, reflexes, blood pressure. Eleanor, he said gravely, you have signs of chronic intoxication. There is no permanent damage, but— It was close. Very close. Close to what? He looked at me with a mix of sadness and professional anger. To not waking up one day. To dying in the night without pain. With your death declared as heart failure due to age. I covered my mouth with both hands. I had been living in a house where every sip could be the last. Every tea, every glass of water, every juice prepared with care by my daughter. Nausea invaded me suddenly. By mid-afternoon, while my granddaughter slept in an armchair in the waiting room, I approached the hallway window and looked out. The sun was starting to set. People were walking by, unaware that in this gray building, my life had just split in two. The life before, where I trusted, and the life now, where trust could kill me. Detective Miller approached with an envelope. Mrs. Eleanor, we found something in the database, she said, sitting beside me. Your daughter bought this substance several times in the last 3 months. Legally, but through gray market channels online, bypassing standard prescriptions. Using your name. My breathing stopped. My heart too, for a second. My daughter, her. The detective looked at me with empathy but professional firmness. I understand this is hard, but facts are facts. I opened my mouth to say something, but no sound came out, just tears falling silently onto my hands. The detective continued, Eleanor, this isn't just a case of attempted homicide. This is something bigger, deeper, more structured, colder. I felt my legs trembling. I grabbed the bench to keep from falling, and then the detective said what would finish sinking me. We believe this wasn't your son-in-law's idea. Then whose? I asked with my soul in tatters. The detective held my gaze and replied, Your daughter's. My chest cracked open as if I had been split from the inside. I didn't scream. I didn't cry out loud. The pain was so deep it found no sound. And within that absolute silence, I could only think of one terrible question. What kind of hate can grow inside a daughter to want to see her own mother dead? That night, they gave me a more private room within the precinct. Not because I asked, but because they saw me break. Not in front of them, not with screams or collapse, but with that deep silence that is born only when the soul receives a blow impossible to assimilate. My granddaughter slept on a small cot, hugging her favorite doll. I watched her motionless, with a mixture of tenderness and fear tearing me apart inside. What does she know? I thought. What has she heard? What has she seen? How far had her mother gone? To what extent had she been used as an instrument in something that never should have touched the innocence of a child? I couldn't close my eyes all night, and when dawn broke, the truths I had been avoiding for decades began to hit my memory like stones. Detective Miller returned in the morning, sitting across from me with a file in her hands. She didn't speak brusquely. She spoke with that tone used by those who know every word can wound more than a bullet. Mrs. Eleanor, we want to ask you some questions about the relationship with your daughter. Not about the crime yet, just the two of you. I felt a knot in my throat. Whatever you need to know, I said. What was she like as a child? That simple question opened a trunk of memories I had kept closed for decades. I remembered Jessica at 6 years old, hiding behind my skirts when something surprised her. I remembered her loud laugh, her taste for attention, her inexhaustible need for affection. I remembered how she cried when her father came home late, how she sought his approval with desperation. She was a sensitive child, I said finally, very sensitive, very attached to me. The detective took notes. Did she ever show problematic behaviors? Intense jealousy, manipulations, exaggerated reactions? I stopped. Because yes, but I always justified them because she was my daughter, because mothers justify, because mothers forgive even what was never said aloud. I remembered when she was 12 and secretly broke the gift I had bought for my sister. When she was 15 and stopped talking to me for a week because I congratulated her in front of her friends and she said I embarrassed her. When she was 18 and accused me of not letting her be free because I asked her to come home before midnight, and how at 22 she changed completely when she met that man. But the most painful truth was another. My daughter had a hunger for love I could never fill, and she always made me pay for it. She was jealous, I said finally, very jealous of everything, of everyone. The detective nodded as if that piece fit a puzzle she was assembling. Jealous of you? That question opened an old but real wound. Yes. A yes that cost me 40 years to admit. Dr. Evans returned that same day with more analysis. He showed me comparisons of past exams, dates when I had had strange symptoms. Look at this, he said, pointing with his pen. 9 months ago you came in for sudden loss of balance. I had forgotten that episode. My daughter held me by the arm all afternoon, made me tea, told me, "Mom, you have to take better care of yourself." And now I understood that perhaps it had also been her who provoked the dizziness. "Eleanor," said the doctor, "there were changes in your labs that aren't normal. Changes indicating this poisoning didn't start weeks ago. It started months ago, perhaps a year. A year. A whole year breathing near someone who wanted me to cease existing." I felt the room spinning not from physical dizziness, but from the emotional impact of understanding what kind of monster had formed inside the child I raised. I remembered a conversation I had with Jessica 4 months ago. We were in the kitchen. She was watching me with arms crossed, with that expression that sometimes reminded me of her father's sarcasm. "Mom, have you ever thought about selling the house?" she asked me. "No," I replied, smiling. "You grew up here. I want the house to go to Lily someday." My daughter had tensed her jaw. I only understood that gesture now. She didn't want the house to be left someday. She wanted it left now, and not just the house. She wanted the peace of mind, the financial independence, total control of her world. In that instant, I understood something chilling. My daughter didn't want my life. She wanted what would come after my death. By mid-afternoon, Detective Miller entered again, this time with a graver expression. "Mrs. Eleanor, we found something else." She offered me some printed photographs. My hands shook as I took them. It was my kitchen, my table, my spice jars, and in one of the photos, my daughter holding a small jar, the same type where I had hidden the pill the night before, only this one wasn't empty. It was full. "When was this photo taken?" I asked, feeling the floor opening beneath my feet. "Approximately 5 weeks ago," the detective replied. "From a neighbor's security camera that caught your window by accident." My daughter manipulating jars containing substances she had bought herself. My daughter entering my kitchen when I wasn't there. My daughter going through my things as if she were no longer my daughter, but a stranger living with a thirst for something I didn't want to imagine. I brought my hands to my mouth. "Oh my God," I whispered. "What happened to her?" The detective closed the file. "That's what we're trying to figure out." But she looked me straight in the eye. "There is something else I need you to hear." My heart stopped. "Your son-in-law, Mark, doesn't appear in any purchase, nor in any registry, nor in any suspicious movement. So, everything we've found, everything pointing to planning, acquiring substances, manipulating your food, everything, Mrs. Eleanor, is directly linked to your daughter." I was left breathless, because there, without the possibility of denial, without room to console myself with theories, the truth stood up in front of me like a complete monster. It wasn't him. It was her. My daughter. My own daughter. My mind repeated a phrase I never thought I'd pronounce in my life. The woman to whom I gave life wanted to take mine away. And that truth, that final darkness, left me in a silence so absolute that I believe for the first time in my life I felt what true loneliness was. I woke up with a start, though I hadn't really been asleep. For days, my body was awake, but my soul kept looking for something to lean on so as not to collapse completely. Every discovered truth was another blow to the structure I had sustained for 63 years. My motherhood, my faith in the most sacred bond, my certainty that a mother always knows her daughter. I was wrong. That morning, the detective was waiting for me with a furrowed brow and a new file under her arm. "Mrs. Eleanor," she said as soon as she saw me, "things are accelerating. Your daughter has tried to communicate with you several times." I felt a chill run down my spine. "Did she try to come here?" "No," she replied. "She called the precinct pretending to be you. She tried to get information on where you're housed, about the tests, the investigation." I put my hand to my chest. "She used my name?" "Yes. And she also said she was desperate and needed to retrieve her daughter." "Yours," she clarified, pointing to Lily, who at that moment was playing quietly near the door. "It seems she doesn't know the child is still with you." My heart did a flip. "And what happens if she finds out?" The detective pursed her lips. "We can't rule out that she might try something. That's why we're going to reinforce your protection and move you to a safe location until we have clear court orders." A safe location. Me, a 3-year-old woman who never hurt anyone, suddenly turned into a target by someone who shared my blood. It was so unreal, it was hard to breathe. The following hours were a succession of statements, signatures, and silent movements of agents coming and going with tense faces. Occasionally, Dr. Evans appeared to check my blood pressure or ask if I had eaten. I just nodded. I didn't remember if I had eaten. I didn't remember if I was hungry. The only thing I felt was a hard weight in the center of my chest, like a knot no one could untie. In the mid-afternoon, an officer entered the room where I waited with my granddaughter. He held a tablet in his hand. "Detective, we have access to the conversations from the phone confiscated from your daughter's husband." I lifted my head sharply. The husband. Mark. The man the police initially believed was involved. The same one I had suspected for years of manipulating my daughter. The one who had extinguished her self-esteem. Detective Miller took the tablet, swiped through some files, and then looked directly at me. "Mrs. Eleanor, I need you to see this." She handed me the device. My fingers trembled. There was an open conversation, messages sent from Jessica's cell phone. "I have everything ready. She doesn't suspect. This time it will work. When it's all done, I want to make sure no one interferes." My vision blurred, my breathing cut short. I lacked air. My daughter planning my death with chilling coldness. I swiped left. There was more. "After that, I want the house. I don't want your family sticking their noses in. The girl mustn't see anything. That's the only thing I care about." I felt nauseous. "Who was receiving these messages?" I asked with a threat of a voice. The detective looked at me with a gravity that made my skin crawl. "No one." "What do you mean, no one?" "They were all sent to a non-existent number. A number that doesn't correspond to any active user." I went blank. I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. I asked, breathing raggedly. "Who was she writing to?" The detective took a breath. "To herself." My hands shook. The tablet fell into my lap. "No, that can't be." "It's a more common practice than you think," explained the detective with a soft voice. "People create fake conversations to organize plans, to convince themselves they have allies, to justify their actions, or to ensure no one contradicts them. My daughter, my little girl, writing messages to herself as if conspiring with someone else, planning my death in fictional conversations, validating her decision through an imaginary version of an accomplice. A type of twisted loneliness I never would have suspected. I covered my face with both hands. I didn't cry. The pain was so great it had surpassed the capacity for weeping. And just when I thought I had touched the bottom of the horror, the detective said, "That's not all." I looked at her without strength. "There's more?" "Yes." She opened another folder. "Bank records." She sat beside me. "Your daughter would receive a significant amount of money if you passed away. Not from inheritance, but from a life insurance policy she acquired 2 years ago. In her name, insuring you, without informing you." A sharp ringing filled my ears. A policy signed by her, small, constant, invisible payments. My granddaughter approached at that moment, innocent, not knowing the adult world was sinking beneath our feet. "Grandma, can I color with you?" I hugged her tight, very tight, with a primitive, animal, desperate need, because I understood that this child was now the only thing I had left, the only pure thing her mother hadn't managed to contaminate yet. The detective closed the folder. "Mrs. Eleanor, what comes now will be hard. We will need your direct testimony against your daughter." I felt an unbearable knot in my throat. "Testifying against the life I brought into the world," she continued. "We must obtain an arrest warrant, and you will be the key piece of this case." I nodded, not because I was strong, not because I wanted to, but because there was no other option. But before I could respond, the detective added, "And there is something else you must understand before we continue." She looked at me intently with a mixture of humanity and professional firmness. "From this moment on, we are no longer investigating an attempted homicide. We are investigating a complete process, a plan, a sustained conduct, a reiterated intention." She closed the file slowly. "Mrs. Eleanor, we are investigating a murder in progress." My soul broke, not into 1,000 pieces, but into a single, large, irreparable one. And in that instant, I knew that what was coming would be even darker than everything I had seen so far. I never thought a person could feel alive and dead at the same time, but that was exactly what was happening to me. I walked, I breathed, I listened, I answered, but inside I was suspended in a middle point between terror and bewilderment. I didn't know where to look, nor what to believe, nor how to hold myself up. My hands trembled even when they were still. My voice seemed to belong to another woman, not me. I, who had been a mother for 40 years, now had to convince myself that my own daughter was capable not only of harming me but of planning my death with surgical precision. A mother split in two. That's what I was. That morning, Detective Miller returned with a look that gave me goosebumps. Her expression wasn't one of urgency, nor anger, nor haste. It was one of care, like someone about to deliver news that could collapse a person forever. "Mrs. Eleanor," she said as she sat across from me, "we are moving forward with new evidence, and I need you to stay strong to hear this." I clasped my hands tightly, as if squeezing them could anchor me to something solid. "Tell me," I whispered. The detective opened a thick binder full of documents, analyses, photographs. I already knew nothing good comes from so many papers together. "Your daughter's behavior didn't start a few weeks ago," she said in a low voice, "nor a few months ago. We have indications that this planning began much earlier." My stomach clenched. "How much earlier?" She looked me straight in the eye. "Approximately 2 years." I felt the air leave my body. 2 years. 2 whole years living under the same roof as someone who was waiting for the perfect moment to see me die. "But why?" I asked, feeling every word cut in my throat. "What did I do for her to?" The detective lowered her gaze slightly, looking for careful words. "It's not about what you did, it's about how she interprets the world, and about something else we must explain to you." She took out a smaller envelope, opening it slowly. "We did a review of your daughter's psychological and medical history. There were consultations, old diagnoses, incomplete treatments." I went rigid. "Treatments?" I asked. "Yes," she replied. "Your daughter presents traits compatible with a severe personality disorder, perceived emotional abandonment, strong distortions of reality, episodes of impulsivity, and a deep need for control." I felt a huge void open beneath my feet. It wasn't just evil, it was something darker, more confusing, more painful. "Are you saying she's sick?" I asked. "What I'm saying," she replied, "is that your daughter lives trapped in a distorted interpretation of reality. To her, people don't exist as such, but as pieces to arrange in her vision of the world. You were always a central figure in her life, but also a figure that generated internal conflict." I put my hand to my chest. I always loved her," I whispered. The detective closed the folder carefully. "I know, but sometimes the love we give isn't the love they believe they receive. And that, in people with your daughter's emotional structure, can transform into deep resentment." I covered my mouth to keep from letting out a whimper, because that word resentment went through me like a knife. My daughter had always felt that I loved her, but she never knew how. And in her confusion, in her invisible wounds, in her diffuse world, she transformed my love into a threat. By mid-morning, I was moved to the conference room where Dr. Evans waited with new results. As soon as I saw him, I knew what was coming wouldn't be easy either. "Eleanor," he began softly, "I need you to hear something without thinking it's your fault. Do you promise me?" That tone is only used by doctors when they have to say what no one wants to hear. I nodded. "I reviewed all your blood work from the last year," he continued, "and I found a pattern. Someone was administering microdoses of the substance at specific times, always in small quantities, always at regular intervals. Your system showed a very slight impact, almost imperceptible, but constant." I sat petrified. "Constant?" "Yes," he said. "And that means this person knew exactly how much to give you, so as not to give themselves away." My hands clenched tightly. The doctor took a deep breath. "The microdoses intensified right after you made the decision to allow your daughter and granddaughter to move in with you. A coincidence we cannot ignore." I brought a hand to my forehead. Suddenly I remembered nights when my daughter insisted on serving tea, days when she prepared my juice, moments when she offered me ice-cold water with a strange smile. I even remember telling her once, "Honey, this tea tastes funny." She had responded with an uncomfortable smile. "Oh, Mom, you're always so complicated with flavors." I also remembered how I had started feeling sleepy after eating, how I started forgetting simple things, how I lost my balance twice for no reason. All those things I attributed to age. I covered my eyes with my hand. It hurt even to remember. "Eleanor," said the doctor, "you aren't here because you survived by a little. You are here because your body is strong and because, without knowing it, you avoided taking doses that could have been dangerous several times. Once you didn't finish a juice, another time you didn't take a pill your daughter insisted on. There were small decisions that saved your life without you knowing." The room seemed to spin. I had lived protected by chance, not by affection, not by love, by chance. At noon, Detective Miller returned. This time she sat beside me, not across. She spoke to me as a woman speaks to another when she knows the wound is already open and doesn't want to enlarge it. "Eleanor, the time has come to face something even harder." The word even froze me. "We have analyzed your daughter's background as a mother," she continued, "and there are signs of emotional neglect toward her own daughter. Not enough to take away custody at the time, but enough to understand patterns. My granddaughter," my voice broke. "She is in danger." The detective took a breath. "We cannot rule it out." I felt a bolt of pain split me in two. "She isn't to blame for anything," I whispered. "She's just a child." "My child." The detective put a hand on my arm. "We know, and that is why she will be protected, but you must be strong. This investigation doesn't just need you as a witness, it needs you as your granddaughter's emotional pillar." My eyes filled with tears because I understood something that hurt more than any previous revelation. I didn't just have to save myself, I had to save my granddaughter from her own mother. That thought was like a direct blow to the soul, but something also woke up inside me. Not rage, not hate, not revenge, but a fierce determination. A maternal force as old as time. A force that only wakes up when a grandmother understands that she will be the one who must protect the life that continues. My daughter had tried to erase my existence, but she wasn't going to erase it from my granddaughter, not while I kept breathing. And for the first time since this started, my body stopped trembling, because I understood that the love I have for that little girl is worth more than the pain my daughter's betrayal causes me. The transfer happened at dawn, when the city was still half asleep. 3 agents escorted me to a discreet vehicle, unmarked, no lights. Almost no one at the precinct knew exactly where we were heading, except the detective and the officer in charge of the operation. My granddaughter still had messy hair, hugging her doll against her chest. She didn't understand anything, but she trusted me. And that simple act of trust broke my soul and gave me strength at the same time. While the car moved through streets I didn't recognize, Detective Miller handed me a closed folder. "Eleanor, what I am going to show you is delicate. You need to know it to understand the real danger." The folder was thicker than the previous ones. My body tensed, just seeing it. "Is it about my daughter?" I asked. "Yes, and about someone else." I felt a shiver. Someone else? Not her husband? It was already clear he wasn't the intellectual author. Then who? When we arrived at the safe house, a small, quiet, protected place, they settled us in a simple room. My granddaughter stayed in a corner, drawing a little house with flowers and a yellow sun. Her innocence shone like a lighthouse in the middle of a dark sea. The detective opened the folder. "We have evidence that your daughter didn't act alone in all stages," she said with a firm tone. "Although the purchases, messages, and administration of the substance were her work, there is evidence that someone was guiding her." I started to shake. "Who?" The detective turned the first document. A bank transfer, a signature, a name I recognized instantly. My sister. The world sank beneath my feet. "No," I whispered. "Brenda?" She couldn't. The detective spoke calmly, like someone walking on broken glass. "We know this news is devastating, but we found money transfers between your daughter and your sister. Small, systematic amounts, plus call logs almost daily for the last 6 months." I covered my face with both hands. My sister, the woman I grew up with whom I shared a bed as children, with whom I cried so many times. My sister, who always felt I had everything. But why? I managed to say with a broken voice. Why would she do something like that? The detective slid another sheet toward me. It was an extract of messages recovered from my daughter's cell phone. Some had been deleted, but the forensic team managed to reconstruct fragments. One of them said, "She doesn't understand that she was always above us. When she dies, justice will finally be done. Don't let the opportunity pass." I felt like I was running out of air. My sister feeding my daughter's hate. My sister reinforcing her delusions, her resentment, her distorted version of reality. My sister pushing her toward the edge. The detective continued. "We understand your daughter already had problematic traits, but someone close reinforced those thoughts for years. Gave her reason, gave her a narrative, gave her a target. My heart squeezed as if it wanted to break. She wanted to inherit my house, my money, my life." The detective shook her head gently. "No, Eleanor. It's not that simple. The motivation doesn't appear to be economic. What we see is accumulated emotional resentment." That phrase pierced me. "Your sister always felt you were your parents' favorite," continued the detective, "and your daughter grew up feeling she could never equal you. You were a strong figure, decisive, admired. Both lived in your shadow. And in fragile and resentful minds, that can become a dangerous narrative." I was left speechless. My breathing became shorter. My hands were freezing. 2 women I loved, 2 women I always supported, 2 women who shared my blood, conspiring to erase my existence. There was no greater pain. Almost an hour passed before I could speak again. Meanwhile, the detective organized documents, recordings, analysis. Every piece added another layer of horror to something that already seemed inhumanly cruel. When I could finally articulate words, I said, "My sister also wanted." The detective avoided the word kill. I appreciated it. "Wanted you to disappear." And she justified herself saying things like, "She's lived too long. She's in the way. Your daughter deserves freedom." I covered my chest with both hands. Freedom. My daughter believing I chained her. A resentful aunt whispering in her ear. An unstable mind receiving emotional poison to later turn it into real poison. "Eleanor," said the detective, softening her voice, "you didn't cause this. No mother deserves something like this. None. Your daughter inherited a fragility that isn't your fault, and your sister fed that fragility until she twisted it." I cried in silence. Heavy tears. Not of rage. Not of hate. Of a strange mourning. The emotional death of 2 people who were still breathing. But something was still missing. The detective closed the folder and said, "And now comes the hardest part to comprehend. Your daughter didn't just plan your death, she also planned the way to justify it socially." I frowned. "Justify it? How?" The detective opened another file. "She invented a story where you were the victim of cognitive decline. She told neighbors, teachers, even the child's pediatrician. She said you forgot things, left stoves on, that you weren't the same anymore." I covered my mouth. But I never. We know. But she was preparing the ground so your death would look natural. Or worse, a slip, a fall, an accident. I felt the walls closing in on me. "And there is more," added the detective as she turned another page. "She sought legal advice to prepare a conservatorship, claiming you were losing autonomy." My skin crawled. But that's done while I'm alive, I said. Exactly, replied the detective. She wanted total control before and after. Suddenly, I understood everything. The poison, the microdoses, the insurance policy, the rumors, the lies, the doctor visits, the induced forgetfulness. My daughter was building a world where my disappearance wasn't a crime, but a logical consequence, a story where my death was credible. I got up from the chair without feeling my legs. I walked to the window. Outside, the wind moved the leaves of a tree. It was an ordinary day, in a world where I could no longer be the same. The detective approached and said, "Eleanor, what comes now will require more strength than everything before. We are going to ask for the arrest warrant. But you must be prepared. She won't give up easily." I nodded slowly. Because something inside me had already changed. A part had broken forever, but another had awakened. The part that protected my daughter when she was a child. The part that would now protect my granddaughter, even if that meant facing the most painful enemy a mother can have. Her own daughter. And the worst was yet to come. The dawn the operation took place seemed darker than usual, as if the sky itself sensed what was about to happen. The silence was so deep that every little noise, the creak of a door, the click of a police radio, the brush of my own hands seemed amplified. My heart beat with an impossible mixture: fear, pain, determination, and a sadness so deep it no longer had a shape. Detective Miller explained everything with surgical precision. "Eleanor, you will not be inside the house during the intervention. You will remain in a secure vehicle accompanied by 2 agents. Your statements already allow us to act. Now we need to catch her in the act to prevent her from claiming manipulation, confusion, or external influence." Catch her. Doing what? I asked, breathless. The detective looked at me fixedly. What she already plans to do. Try again. The world narrowed. My legs almost gave out. I, a mother, a grandmother, had to allow my daughter to approach the line of the crime to be able to stop her. It was like opening the cage of a wounded animal, knowing it would come straight for me. "Don't worry," said the detective. "You won't be in danger. She won't touch you again. Everything will be monitored." But the words "my daughter will try to do it again" kept echoing inside me. The plan was precise, complex, calculated. The police would leave the house, apparently unprotected. I would appear to return, accompanied only by my granddaughter. My daughter, knowing this because they would make sure to leak it subtly, would come to the house. Micro-cameras hidden in the kitchen, living room, and my bedroom would record every movement. Ambient microphones would capture every word. Undercover agents would be close, ready to intervene. It was necessary. It was the end. But also the greatest betrayal a mother can live. The detective told me, "Don't see it as betrayal. See it as protection. You aren't choosing this. She chose every step that brought us here." I knew she was right. But the heart doesn't understand reasons, only feelings. At 10 a.m., they escorted us to the vicinity of my house. I was seated in the back seat of the police vehicle, looking out the window at the street where I had lived so many happy moments before everything went wrong. My granddaughter was in another car, safe, guarded by specialized agents. When we turned the corner and I saw my driveway, I broke inside. The detective, from the front seat, watched me through the rearview mirror. "Are you ready?" "No. I would never be." But I nodded. Approximately 20 minutes later, they received the notification. "Detective, the subject is in motion. She left her house 5 minutes ago." My heart did a flip so strong I felt dizzy. "Is she coming alone?" asked the detective. "Affirmative. Driving fast." The entire police team activated. Vests were adjusted, radios checked. The atmosphere changed. Now it smelled of adrenaline. I could only think of one thing. My daughter was coming toward me to kill me. And although I knew she wouldn't succeed, the simple certainty tore me apart. The car stopped in front of my house with an abrupt brake. The police, hidden in strategic points, watched. My daughter got out of her vehicle. She walked decisively, with quick, almost anxious steps. She carried a bag in her hand. She knew perfectly where she was going. That fierce determination on her face froze my blood. There were no doubts. There was no confusion. There was no sadness. There was purpose. The detective whispered, "Target entering the perimeter." I gripped the edge of the seat. My nails dug into the synthetic leather. My daughter opened the door with the key she still kept. She entered. An agent spoke over the radio. "She's in the kitchen." Checking the cabinets. "Looking for something?" "Yes, she's looking for your jars, your glass, the opportunity she thought lost." Minutes later, the same agent reported. "She took out a small jar, the same type we used as evidence. She is pouring water into a glass, now pouring the substance." My stomach contracted. I wanted to cry, but the tears wouldn't come out anymore. I had passed to the level of pain where there is no weeping, just a dry silence. The detective spoke fast. "Wait. We need verbal confirmation for the accusation to be solid." Then they activated the ambient microphone. My daughter's voice filled the vehicle's speaker, a calm, serene, cold voice. "Ready, Mom," she said while stirring the glass. "This time you'll sleep forever." I felt my soul detach from my body. She didn't scream. She didn't tremble. She didn't hesitate. My daughter was ready to kill me like someone prepares afternoon tea. Her next phrase was even more devastating. "In the end, it'll be easier for everyone. I swear to you. For everyone. For her. For my sister. But not for me." The detective didn't wait any longer. "Team, go! Go now!" I heard the hurried steps, the dry thuds against the door, the screams of, "Police! Don't move!" The sudden confusion, the clash of reality against illusion. Then, a sound I will never forget. My daughter's scream. Not of fear, not of regret, of fury. "Let me go. You don't understand anything. Everything is her fault. It's always been." Her words pierced the metal of the vehicle, the distance, time, my entire heart. An officer communicated by radio. Subject secured. My daughter arrested. My daughter handcuffed. My daughter maddened with rage. Not pain, not confusion. Rage. And in that moment, I knew with absolute clarity. It wasn't about illnesses or manipulations. My daughter hated me, and that hate had matured for years until transforming into this. The detective opened the vehicle door and sat beside me. "Eleanor, we did it. She is in custody. She can't hurt you anymore." I didn't answer, because although my life was safe, my soul had just broken forever. The detective touched my shoulder carefully. "I know it hurts, but today you saved 2 lives. Yours and your granddaughter's." My eyes finally gave in. The tears that had resisted began to fall slow, heavy, uncontrollable, because that day I didn't just lose a daughter. I lost the illusion of ever having known her. I never imagined silence could hurt more than screams. But there I was, sitting in a cold room at the detention center, listening to the soft echo of my own heartbeat. Everything smelled of disinfectant, metal, hopelessness. The white fluorescent lights flickered as if they also resisted illuminating that place. They had asked me if I wished to see my daughter. The answer wasn't immediate. Not because I doubted, but because my soul was split between the instinct of a mother and the protection of a woman who had been about to be murdered by the child she once cradled in her arms. In the end, I said yes. I needed to see her, not to forgive her, not to scold her. I needed to look into the eyes of the woman who had tried to erase me from the earth. They showed me to a glass-partitioned room, divided in 2. A chair on each side, a direct light on both. A cold that seemed to come from the floor itself. The opposite door opened, and she entered. It wasn't my daughter. Not the girl who ran barefoot through the yard. Not the teenager with long braids who hid behind me during storms. Not the young woman who cried on my shoulder the day of her wedding. It was someone else. Her hair was disheveled in her orange jumpsuit, her gaze lost and aggressive at the same time. She had deep, dark circles, skin without shine. But what impacted me most was her expression, a mixture of contempt, contained rage, and a coldness I never knew in her. She sat in front of me. She didn't say Mom. She didn't ask about her daughter. She didn't cry. She didn't break. She just watched me as if I were an object. It was I who spoke first. "Why?" I asked barely, because I didn't have strength for more. She tilted her head with a strange grimace. "Why what? Why did you try?" I brought a hand to my chest. "I am your mother." Her eyes didn't soften an inch. "Because you were always in the way." My heart stopped. In the way of what? She rested her elbows on the metal ledge with a calm that froze me. "Of my life. of my decisions, of my freedom, and above all, of what was rightfully mine. I covered my mouth with a hand. "The house?" I asked, devastated. She let out a dry laugh. "Not just the house. Everything. Your whole life was better arranged than mine. You always had it easier. More love, more respect, more attention, more opportunities." I closed my eyes. It was the voice of pure resentment. It was the voice of my sister repeated in her. "I worked my whole life to give you the best," I whispered. "I didn't ask you for anything," she screamed suddenly, slamming the ledge with her fist. "I never asked you for anything, but you always reminded me. Every time you breathed, you reminded me how little I was worth compared to you." I let out a sob. "I never compared you," I said. "I never wanted to compete with you." She smiled with a cruelty that broke my soul. "Well, I did, Mom. My whole life. And you won without trying. Do you know what that does to someone's head?" I got tired of losing. A tear slid down my cheek. She continued with a coldness that would make the hardest man shiver. "And when I understood that as long as you were alive I would never have anything, I decided to do what I had to do." "And your daughter?" I whispered with a threat of a voice. "Were you going to use her as a tool her whole life too?" For the first time, her gaze wavered for just a second. "My daughter is mine." "Your daughter is a child," I said with broken firmness. "And you put her in a hell she didn't ask for." She spoke almost with contempt. "You turn her against me. You always did. You always took everyone away from me." A wave of despair ran through my body. "You think—" I tried to breathe. "That planning my death would fix something?" "It would fix everything," she replied without hesitation. "You die. I inherit. I decide. I am the owner of my life, finally." That was the exact instant her mask fell completely. There was no love, there was no regret, there was no doubt. There was conviction. My daughter truly believed I should die. The detective entered the room at that moment, signaling the guards to remove her. My daughter stood up abruptly, pointed a finger at me, and screamed, "This doesn't end here. I swear to you, everything that happened is your fault. It always was." Her words tore me, but they didn't surprise me. It was the same speech, the same narrative, the same poison. The door closed behind her. I fell slowly forward until I rested my forehead on my hands. My shoulders shook, not from fear, not from shock, from mourning. Because that day I understood that my daughter no longer existed. She had been devoured by something stronger than her: resentment, frustration, emotional fragility, and the destructive influence of those who surrounded her. And then, Detective Miller sat beside me. "Eleanor," she said softly, "you didn't lose her today. You lost her years ago. Only no one saw it." My tears fell silently. "But I want you to understand something," she continued. "Now comes the most important part: the repair, the reconstruction, the protection of your granddaughter. Your daughter will face a long process, and you must be strong, no longer for her, but for the child." I wiped my eyes, breathed deeply, and for the first time since it all began, I felt something inside me change. I no longer had the hope of recovering my daughter, but I did have the determination to build a different future for my granddaughter. A future where she did grow up with healthy love. A future where she was never used. A future where she could be free without destroying anyone. A future without shadows. Because I understood something devastating. When the mask falls, the truth doesn't liberate. The truth hurts, but it also wakes you up. And I, at my 63 years, was waking up. The days following my daughter's arrest were at the same time a respite and a funeral. Respite because I knew I was no longer in danger. Funeral because although my body was safe, my soul kept carrying the unbearable weight of having lost my daughter while she was still alive. Not a sudden loss, but a slow, painful loss, like a crack opening over years until one day it finally breaks everything. They moved me to a safe house, small but warm. It was a house provided by the Witness Protection Program. Light walls, simple furniture, a tiny garden that caught the sun in the mornings. The first time my granddaughter ran through that garden, her laugh illuminated a corner inside me I thought was extinguished forever. She adapted well. Children always know how to find light, even in the most uncertain places. I watched her and was surprised by the speed with which she resumed joy, as if her innocence knew how to wrap pain in a soft bandage. I wondered if one day I would have to explain what happened, if someday she would ask me for details, if she would want to understand, or if life itself would give her the wisdom to accept without destroying herself. But for now, I just wanted to protect her. The judicial process began a week later. The evidence was incontestable. The substance found, the registered purchases, the messages on her phone, the ambient audio, my daughter's voice recorded trying to prepare the glass where she would have put the final dose. My sister Brenda had also been arrested and charged as an intellectual co-conspirator. The day I was subpoenaed to testify, I felt my heart shrink like wet paper. "Are you ready?" asked the detective. "One is never ready for this," I replied. "But I can do it." I entered the courtroom. The white lights, the dry echo of voices, the distance between the seats, everything seemed cold, mechanical, like a place where the soul had to stay at the door because inside only laws and truth mattered. My daughter was escorted to her seat. She didn't look at me. Or perhaps she did, but with those empty eyes that no longer belonged to the child I raised. When the judge called me, I walked slowly. My breath trembled, but my steps were firm. I sat down, put my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. And for the first time in my life, I understood that telling the truth is sometimes a violent act, not against the other, against oneself. I told everything. The microdoses, the dizziness, the pill, the doctor, the police, the recording, the betrayal. My broken voice filled the room. Some present looked down. Others watched me with a mix of astonishment and sadness. The prosecutor listened with attention, adjusting notes. I couldn't see my daughter's face, but I could feel her accelerated breathing, as if every word I pronounced pushed her one step further toward the reality she no longer controlled. When I finished, there was a silence so deep I could hear my own heart. The judge looked at me solemnly. "Thank you, Mrs. Eleanor. You may step down." As I left, I passed near my daughter. She didn't look at me, or perhaps she did, but not with the eyes of someone who recognizes a presence, but with the eyes of someone trapped in a world that no longer resembles ours. And it was then I understood something devastating. My daughter hadn't just wanted to kill me. My daughter no longer knew who she was, nor who I was to her, nor who she herself was. She was a broken soul, a mind mistreated by its own shadows. And although part of me wanted to hate her, the deepest part could only cry for what could have been and never was. The trial lasted 3 months. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution asked for a high sentence. The defense tried to argue emotional problems, but without success. It wasn't an impulsive act. It was a meticulous plan, repeated, reinforced, fed over years. The day of the sentencing, I sat in the first row holding my granddaughter's hand. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but she knew her mommy was in trouble. I didn't lie to her. I only told her, "Your mommy is sick, my love. And when people are very sick, they need help, even if that help doesn't look like what we expect." She hugged me tight. The judge read the verdict. Guilty of attempted aggravated homicide, premeditation, use of toxic substances, manipulation of minors, and falsification of medical information. Sentenced to 27 years in prison with mandatory psychiatric evaluation. I felt a shudder. Not of relief, not of sadness, of acceptance. My sister Brenda received 9 years for complicity, incitement, and logistical support. My daughter was taken out of the room without looking at me. I watched her go and thought, I gave you life twice, once when you were born, and another when I decided to survive what you planned. I hope someday you find the peace I couldn't give you. Today, months later, I write these lines from our new home. A small, tidy house in a quiet Ohio suburb with plants that my granddaughter and I take care of together. She goes to school, laughs, plays, asks curious questions like all children. Sometimes she mentions her mom, and I breathe deep before answering. I don't lie, but I don't destroy either. I tell her what she can comprehend. The rest she will learn when she has the age and strength to face it. I, for my part, have begun to rebuild myself. It still hurts. There are days I wake up without understanding how we got here. Days when I look at the photo of my daughter at 8 years old and wonder at what moment she lost her way. Days when silence is heavy. But there are also new days. Days where I cook without fear. Days where I sleep without waking up startled. Days where I look at the sky and simply give thanks for being alive. because I discovered something I never imagined learning at 63. The second life begins when the first was about to be extinguished. My daughter tried to erase me, but what she did was push me to be born again. And in this new life, I swear my granddaughter will grow surrounded by healthy love, by truth, by care, by light. Because what I couldn't save in my daughter, I will save in her. This is my promise, my purpose, my new life. Sometimes I sit in the small garden of our new house, right in the wooden chair facing the lemon tree. The wind moves the leaves gently. My granddaughter plays with a kite in the background, and I close my eyes to listen to life. A life almost snatched from me without my knowledge. A life that today, at 63, I feel more mine than ever. I have learned that the deepest pain doesn't come from enemies, but from those we love. That the most devastating betrayal is the one that arrives from a familiar face. And yet, I also discovered that inside the human heart exists a strength that only wakes up when there is nothing left to hold on to. I cannot deny that I miss my daughter. I miss the child she was. I miss the illusion of what I thought we would be. But I also accepted that there are loves that wound, that destroy, that darken everything around them. And when that love becomes dangerous, a mother must make a decision she never thought to face. Protect her life and that of the innocents, depending on her. Today, my granddaughter sleeps peacefully. She no longer fears screams. She no longer asks permission to laugh. She no longer hides to be a child. And I am relearning what peace is. Not a perfect peace, without scars. No, this is a peace made of scraps, of absences, of sleepless nights, of tears that don't hurt the same anymore. But it is peace, and that is enough. Sometimes I look at the sky and talk to God. I tell him I don't understand why what happened, but I also thank him because I survived, because I am still here, because I had the opportunity to choose a different path, because I could break a chain that came from very far back, because my granddaughter, that little light, now grows without shadows. Life didn't go back to being the same, but it went back to being life, and in the end, that is the most valuable thing I could recover. Thank you for accompanying me to the end of this deep and painful story. If this account moved you, I invite you to support this channel. Subscribe right now so you don't miss the next stories. Leave a like so I know this narration reached your heart. And tell me in the comments what city you're watching from, what you thought of this story, and what you would have done in my place. Your opinion is very important to me. Thank you for being here, and for giving life to this space with your words.